Hi, welcome to our new video. In this, we are going to discuss about the low latency performance with the AWS Local Zones, which has been newly introduced by the AWS, which helps you to reduce the latency for the zones which are might not be directly accessible from your client location, and so thus help you to reduce the latency. So imagine that you have set up a new EC2 instance and everything was working fine, and then you started testing out your network and you find that there is a problem with the latency and with the network. So your application response time has increased. Now AWS offered initially starting, AWS only was available in certain regions and the availability zones. So you do not have the capability to expand that out, and then eventually they start growing these regions and the zones in number, and but that also although it increased the availability of the multiple zones in a region for the high availability perspective, but then again the latency was one important aspect. Now if your application is something which is like you are hosting a website and uh, uh, you are serving the sites like in a text or those formats, then it might not be that much critical for you on the latency part, because the data itself is very small. But then if we talk about the applications which are like the streaming applications, which has huge amount of data, the video, the audio, those amount of data to be delivered over the network. Now this is where the latency becomes a sensitive aspect, and you need to put the every thing which is possible to optimize your network so that the latency is always on the local on the reduce, and your clients are basically able to get the maximum potential, and that's how the client satisfaction also increases. Now this is where the AWS local zones comes into play, and these are basically type of a newly created edge locations in the AWS that are being provided in the metropolitan areas. Now using the zones, you can achieve the lower latency and more granular control over which regions you deploy. So if we talk about a little bit of the background of the regions and availability zone, AWS has the largest geographical unit of measurement in AWS world is region. Now region is a large area containing the multiple data centers that we all know. Inside these regions, the data center are considered to be an availability zone, and availability zones are spread basically for the fault tolerance across a region. So if one data center is down, still the another data center is working, and that's how your application will still be working. But then when you spin up a new instance and you select the availability zone, you would like to pretty much you are pretty much done. And although Amazon provides a list of edge location, the AZ wasn't explicitly tied to a particular location. So you can now let's for example, if you couldn't explicitly deploy in a particular city like Los Angeles, so when you deploy into these zones, you it's pretty much up to you to estimate which one has the best latency for your application. The new now comes these new zones. Now with the introduction of the local zone, AWS has now provides the specific availability of the zones in the major cities. The best part of this is that each zone is explicitly labeled according to the city it resides in. Now you can actually deploy an instance into a particular city as well. Below are the currently available zones which are there. So you have the now zones available in Atlanta, the Boston, Chicago, Dallas, Houston, Kansas City, Miami, Minneapolis, New York City, and the Philadelphia. So these are, and then the local zones are available in Denver, Las Vegas, Los Angeles, Phoenix, Portland, Seattle. So you can see that there is a whole world of possibilities which are where you can deploy the your instances now. on the basis of the local zones which have been made available. So you can make your video available to your customers in the Portland or Denver, and it will be much quicker than a normal availability zone. Now obviously there are few limitations to this local zones. They are not exactly alike the zones AZs that we talk about in the AWS, because the AWS service catalog is not fully available in these local zones. What this means is that you will not have a support for all the EC2 instances types. Okay, that is also a limitation. So first one is that not all the services will work in the local zones, and second is not all the EC2 instances will be available. So this is something which you will have to verify before working on this. There is an AWS support page which you can refer, or you can also use the AWS CLI and describe the instance offerings with a particular location and zone. So AWS will list out all the instances which you can use. Now the fun part is about the numbers. Okay, so let's try and figure out what kind of latency numbers we can expect when we use the local zones. So according to this, so obviously see, measuring the latency is particularly difficult, because there are so many factors that you have to consider over the latency. But here we are just focusing on the network latency from the AWS end. So if your client accesses the server and basically he is in the same region, so let's suppose he is accessing from New York City, and it will reach a degraded path which is far outside the city, and you may not see much improvement at all. Now according to Amazon, if you are located in the same city as the instance deployed into the local zone, then you can expect single digit millisecond latency. Now what this means is, suppose that some of my client is accessing my application from the New York City, and suppose I am using the local zone, then I can expect a latency of 2.5 millisecond. But suppose if I am not using the local zone, then I can expect a latency of 7.5 millisecond, which is 3 times. Okay, although the number might look small, but actually when you have the huge amount of data for the video, then it significantly adds up. Now there is a so the local time zone, local zones are like the quickest way to serve this your video or your audio applications, and deploying them across the local zone. And so this is all about the local zones and the advantages from the latency perspective. This were recently added. Okay, so that's all for this video. If you haven't subscribed to our channel yet, I will suggest you to subscribe to our channel now. Okay, and for more such videos. Thank you everyone.